Right, so okay, it's here.
To my brother, protector, and with understanding transforms and sun and cloud by defilements or traces of ignorance, which teaches detective ways from those love. Samsara confuses the darkness of ignorance overwhelmed by this suffering. You is driving on the proclamation of the Dharma.
The super hard delusions.
And frees us from the iron chains of our karma. This powerful sword of wisdom shoots down suffering wherever it strikes me, clearing away the darkness of ignorance. I entreat you, O my Geshe, whose princely body is adorned with 112 lines of the Buddha, who has completed the 10 stages achieving the highest perfection of a Bodhisattva, who has been pure from the beginning. O man, Geshe, all loving one, with the greatest of your wisdom, illuminate the darkness and closing my mind. Enlighten my intelligence and wisdom so that I gain insight into Buddha's words and the text that explain them. Saji Kishore Shename Jamare Sangye Chodan Tsoge Chonamba Chanchu Pate Dhammi Katsuchi Dagi Chushi Nipetsona Rola Beje Sangye Dropa Sangye Chodan Tsoge Chonamba Chanchu Pate Dhammi Katsuchi Dagi Chushi Nipetsona Rola Beje Sangye Dropa Sangye Chodan Tsoge Chonamba Chanchu Pate Dhammi Katsuchi Dagi Chushi Nipetsona Rola Beje Sangye Dropa Kanki Tudzini Zonde Tawa Tamji Pambichir Tambi Chunu Tenze Kodam Kela Chanze Lo. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Kazin Samdi Harchi Shagbalani said, Shajing over the Shag Sulsen, Hachi Shagbataliata, Kan Shag Guru, over Sanamudu, Kan Shag Guru, take back the wins and so. And it is Shag Sulni, Tamuda, Shaji, the one wins in the Zavi City, Dani, Michigan, Ranjin Kanamanton, Chivi Diva Kanye, Given said he. And Shashi, take what he wins in Chile.
Let's go back to the text and pick up from the point that we left off yesterday. So, where's the text? Just a second, I'll open it. Vanished. So, we're looking at the fourth antidote, the power of turning away from faults, or turning away from negativity. So we're going to pick up from verse 63 that comes under the heading of confession what one did before. So what are the things that we're going to confess? We're going to confess negativities, and this is what this section is dealing with. The negativity is being confessed.
Ani ju remusum yunguyores. Ta julaya ani zo di kolong chagores ra kolong chanza ani kolong ya chidang ju kolong da tu kolong se ta chi ani kolong ge rumbatila ya an mambu yunguyores. Ta zo kolong dila ya ani ju kolong da tu kolong ni chi ongi an telaya dan mishitimu vesagi timu mari baseti ro kanji ju kolon ya timu mari wa yungu tu kolon ya timu mari wa yungu resra neza ta dimji timu mari bi munzeti dan mishi timu veseti ani kolon ji ju kolon sene tu kolon ani mari wa munzi chigores.
So verse 63, that explains what one has to confess, which are negativities, non-virtues. It says, I, out of unknowing ignorance, have created natural non-virtuous actions. This is how it begins. So we confess negative non-virtuous actions. And in confessing them, we can look at different parts of negativities, non-virtues. From the point of view of causes, from the point of view of entities, from the point of view of their results. Now, from the point of view of causes, we can look at the motivation that we engendered in the creation of negativities, non-virtues. And as such, there are a couple of ways of looking at the motivation. There is the motivation at the time of the cause and motivation at the time of performing negativities. So here, the first line that says, I, due to ignorance of unknowingness, is addressing those two types of motivations. Motivation at the time of the causes, or the causal motivation, you could say. The causal motivation was ignorance of unknowingness, but just as well at the time of performing an action, we had ignorance of unknowingness.
Mombo mariba danzen se ter yures energy le gyundela ya ani kanji le gyunde ki le gewachi balte ni jebe devan juma mishiba le migi wachi balte ni jebe dungon jungu ya mishibe kanji lendela mombi ge ani mombo mariba chichini mariba ni yures ra.
And as this verse says, I, out of unknowing ignorance, have created natural non-virtuous actions. Natural non-virtuous actions can also be translated as non-virtuous actions with respect to reality. So, or which are not based on reality in that sense. So we have ignorance of unknowingness, and as such, it could be unknowingness with respect to reality. The way that things exist, the nature of existence. But also there is another type of ignorance that is ignorant with respect to karma, actions and the results. Not knowing that from virtuous actions come happiness, and from non-virtuous actions, negativities, suffering arises. So not knowing the working of karma in this way, we have a second type of ignorance. So when we look at ignorance here, that plays a role as the causal ignorance and ignorance at the time of performing an action. We have ignorance with respect to reality, ignorance of grasping it as self, and also ignorance with respect to the working of karma.
Tommy Mariva T. Wangi, any Chadanki, any Chadangi Wangi, that's any Chava Marab Chevalia, Shu Kalaya, the Chava Marab the Chevala Penny, Duman Jungu Yoba, Mashibi, the Tuji Colon, Lendela Mombi Mariva Selana Chovores, or Dindri Tonda, and Migi Lelia Shu Wedge. Jungueras,
and out of these two types of ignorance, ignorance with respect to reality, the way that phenomena exist, and ignorance with respect to karma, actions, and the results, the main type of ignorance here is ignorance with respect to reality, the way that phenomena exist, which is also called by various names or various titles. So it is also called beginningless ignorance, and also ignorance that is the causal motivation, ignorance with respect to reality. And because of that ignorance with respect to reality, we have also ignorance with respect to karma, actions and the results. Due to ignorance, beginningless ignorance, ignorance that is the causal motivation, that which is with respect to reality, anger and attachment arise, and we end up behaving in a way that is ill-mannered. We engage in bad behavior, performing actions that bring about suffering. And in the performance of actions that bring about suffering, of course, we also have ignorance with respect to actions and the result that they produce.
Chebi Deva Kanye Islam, the lady and late done Nunzin Chigoras. Telaya and the Ranshin Kanamanto and Dikpas Lam Chogores, Dikpa, said me, Dikpa down, Ranshin Kanamanto, Dikpa down, and Chebi Kanamanto, and Nebas Lavora, Dikpa Chago, the Chebi Kan Chayang, the Ton de Lea. And Diva Chagoma means any Chebi Kanaman to it, Niba, any Kanyaranji, Shuchini, and Miki was Sachavati. That's Shashi, Mubudi, the Chagoras.
Cheba Kanamatoa in Tonga Be Kagib.
Chebi Kanamanto, Tonga be Kagata.
And a chick than the Sawa in the Dick Pasagrave, Niga Ragrave, I mean,
Dubai in my chest. Check the Tishija University.
It says, out of unknowing ignorance, I have created natural non-virtuous actions. Actually, I was not that clear in my translation before. So out of unknowing ignorance with respect to reality, with respect to the nature of phenomena, I have created natural non-virtuous actions. Natural non-virtuous actions refers to negativities that are negative by nature. So there are two type of actions that this verse discusses. Virtues which are negativities, which are negative by nature, and then faults that we accrue in relation to prescribed misdeeds. Right? So we have natural misdeeds and prescribed misdeeds. So natural misdeeds are natural non-virtuous actions. And accepted negativities, that refers to prescribed misdeeds. So what's the difference between natural misdeeds and prescribed misdeeds? Well, we have things that are negative by nature. We call them negativities. We have faults that we accrue with respect to prescribed things. And those faults are also called downfalls, right? So downfalls. of faults are accumulated with respect to prescribed misdeeds.
Tilda tanda dipa singdi kandajile ngi chigoslandi dipa sedi ranshin kanamanto ranshin kanamanto slawandi pigi tachi tomba yoda meki ani chi kansa sudachi dibji ledele shubayna ani nyeba chagi yona telaya ranshin kanamanto sigres tomba yoda me ki kansa sudachi ledele shubayna ani nyeba jongiyona dipa chagores taya kachi ani domba yona ani nyeba ledele shuna nyeba domba mena nyeba mengi penata chi chantong ngi nyeba ta di che kyang gi tomba tonse dire ma di ranjin kanamando chago baris
Ne domba chi yona chanto wa ina ba ne chebe kanama to anya ba chiksagirwa to wa chiksagir ne domba dio be kengi domba di gawa kengi dik pasage man
digpa sagmaris digpa lagu dela nyepa yin digpa mais
chesa ni den de ragi mare nyama nga so
ni raya yorda ni jitang ni yonga yorwa inaya ni yor pena gelhon jigi tondro jikse bayna dombal tembi niba chikdan sevi vi sochi vi niba niga jungres ton
All right, so prescribed, so we have natural misdeeds and then prescribed misdeeds. So natural misdeeds are those which you accumulate regardless of whether you have a vow or not, which means that acting in a way that is negative by nature will come with a certain fault and natural misdeeds, regardless of whether you have a vow or not. Now, that's negativities. Now, with respect to prescribed misdeeds, which are also called downfalls, you have taken a certain vow, and you have behaved in a way that transgresses the vow that you have taken. So you commit a prescribed misdeed, and that's a fault or a downfall. Now the question is, do you get also a negativity when you behave in that way? Well, there are a couple of cases that we can look into. The first case in which you commit a prescribed misdeed, that is a downfall, but without a negativity. Like, for example, drinking alcohol is not negative by nature. But if you have taken a vow in which you have committed to abstain from intoxicants, from alcohol, and you drink alcohol, that's a prescribed misdeed. But since drinking alcohol is not negative by nature, then you don't get negativity. That's case number one. Case number two is, for example, if you're fully ordained and you kill an animal, let's say, you have a prescribed misdeed and you also have negativity involved with that. You have a prescribed misdeed because you have transgressed your vow, and you also have committed a negativity because killing is negative by nature.
Dirida chechang sedi chepa sedi domba tangai chani shapo goris the domba menginchiki domba le manyunginchiki and pen changi news tomba no telaya mixigi dio mares tara pigi digba de yo mare pena Ranshin Kanki Chik and it Cesore, and Chikunore, and Tindilea, Kanji Sevi Ranshin Chimpi, Legia Chamugasra, Ani Suzuki, that's Tomakatin Chinubi, Ani Givishin and Nimbi, that's Tombataya, Ani Calendar and Gagmenza, Dipayamare, Chebadan Toyama, cousin Suzuki Tomamenza, Adini Kaimares.
So we have things that are not negative by nature. Like, for example, if you haven't taken a vow, which means that you haven't accepted yourself a particular thing, the act of drinking just a little bit of alcohol is not considered to be negative. So vows are things that you have accepted upon yourself. It is a commitment, right? But if you haven't accepted anything upon yourself, if you haven't made a commitment, then if you drink just a little bit of alcohol, it is not something that is negative by nature. So suppose that then you meet a spiritual friend, you receive teaching from that spiritual friend, but still you haven't made any commitment. You haven't taken any vow. Even though you could say that now you have met a spiritual friend, you're relying upon them, since you haven't taken a vow, if you haven't made a commitment, and you drink just a little bit of alcohol, you do not accrue a prescribed misdeed. And also, it is not something that is negative by nature.
Suzu Meselaya Nudas, Nudas, the Tom Muevach, Tom Miribadoji, the Chavors that delay never heard the Mesag. The Tobadoji, Kanji, and Chang Tsumi Tom Denny, Susu sent two Jovianza, and sent two like Denny, and Chava Maru Shilea Shu Jovianza, the Carso di Miribachi, Muvaji, Yashiamaredos.
So I left out something Geshe said, I suppose that you drink a little bit in a way that doesn't undermine your physical well-being, nor that is damage your wealth or possessions and so forth, right? So we're looking at this scenario. So it says that in this scenario, since you haven't taken a vow, it's not considered to be a prescribed misdeed. It's not considered to be something that is negative. So it is presented like that, but still we need to think about it. We need to analyze that. Like, for example, what happens when you drink too much? Right? If you drink then too much and become intoxicated, can we still maintain that since you do not have a vow and drinking is not negative by nature, there is nothing wrong with that? Well, Geshe reckons that when you drink too much, it is something that is actually not really suitable or appropriate for you to do, because it's hard to then maintain that there is no harm in doing that. To begin with, your mind becomes disturbed or confused. Your mind becomes confused, which means that with a confused mind, you start acting in ways which are mistaken, which end up in certain difficulties or complications. So from that perspective, then drinking too much is something that is not suitable. It's not really appropriate.
Ani pena ani chadam mosong giwangi sem chubaino sem chubari changra la soba tuzi la soba sebal teni sem chubaino sem chuba chibaras Tinza ani manzuta ji chardang mosum pangwae zo dia sem chu jo ge giri. Timu pangwae zo dia sem chu jo ge tinza ani chara pangwae dia zo di sem chu jo ge za del de pang we ba pang goya chi. Ti tong na peshi nyeba yors lam na lab chawa chi chagdo asra.
So we spoke about drinking to the point in which your mind becomes confused. Since our actions of body and speech follow upon the mind, when a mind becomes confused, also our actions of body and speech become distorted. So when we look at our afflictive states of mind, anger and attachment, we say that anger and attachment are confused states of mind. The mind is disturbed. The mind becomes disturbed due to anger and attachment. Similarly, we can say that the mind becomes confused or disturbed because of intoxicants. So we regard anger and attachment as and ignorance as afflictions that are to be abandoned because they confuse the mind, because they disturb the mind. So if we consider them to be object of abandonments because they confuse the mind, what about intoxicants, alcohol and the like, which also confuse the mind and disturb the mind? Well, we should follow the same logic, don't you think? So therefore, although they haven't been stated, intoxicants haven't been stated like that, Geshe still reckons that if you use them to the point in which your mind becomes confused, intoxicated, confused, disturbed, then you really need to give them up. You really need to abstain from them. It's not suitable to abstain from them because they're still involved with a confused state of mind. So in that sense, you could say that when you get to the point in which your mind is disturbed or confused, there is a fault in that.
아니 또 주디 변했다 소소타위 dombi 동 시작하는 주다 아니 dom버커랑 아니 룽아기 내가 때문에 시작이었어 디기 동안이었다 아니 룽아가 때문에 동안인 거라서 디디기 내가 강 제바디 아니 갑디 아니 샤시기 So
then going back to the verse, we're looking at negative actions that are done with our body, speech, and mind, and also downfalls that we accrue in relation to a vow that we have. And we accrue them when we behave in a certain way, physical or verbal. These are the things that we confess here, right? So we're looking at verse number 63. What one has to confess. So it says, I have created natural non-virtuous actions and accepted negativities. Accepted negativities are prescribed misdeeds. These are the things that we confess here.
아니 잔주 생활한결라 마치와 깨바 네버 고는 공도 돼야 지든자 니게 같은 거긴 지금 쪼디 아니 잔주 생활 라비시고 민도 쪼디 차고 딘지 네버 칸사바디 아니 수주게 같이 아니 룽아이스 간다질 때문에 쌓여봐 아니 유 간다질 때문에 쌓여봐 두 간다질 때문에 쌓여봐 아니 너상로 때디 아니 심친 비게 상모당 아니 생에 전부터네 아니 샤담 제디 아니 샤담 내가 조직 차고 그랬어.
Now, in a more specific way, when we look at Shantideva's Guide to Bodhisattva Way of Life, the main training that we take up here is the training in the mind of enlightenment and the conduct of bodhisattvas. So, performing negativities and prescribed misdeeds, which are incongruous with the training in bodhicitta and the practice of bodhisattvas are the main things that we confess here, right? So you could think of a confession in general, but one that is specific here to the Gatu Bodhisattva way of life. After all, we want to give rise to bodhicitta if we haven't done it so. We want to maintain it to prevent it from falling into decline and to increase it more and more. This is the main subject matter of this text. So therefore, what we want to confess and also to restrain our mind are things that are incongruous with those training. So we want to become very clear in our mind of the actions of body, speech, and mind that we have performed in relation to that. We also want to become very specific with respect to what objects did we use as objects of those negativities. What was the time or the period that we have performed those negativities or prescribed misdeeds? Becoming very clear about them in our mind, we confess and restrain our mind.
And you send layer to the Chardam Monsong Konilanch. So deep in that Mumba Mariba, the time on to get a labor rosary. These shoe chamberji tongue Pigilia. And it Chachi the Kiam, the two deep, and it chapat the down Tenichi and that chip Nanjulia, the Namton Jatmurata, and Jansen said of the chip. And it Chadok said of the Sena Sailors or Tapemamor, that Jadadi. And it so deep and it Chadanim constant due the Kanji Timji, the Namam Chede Yoras. In a so deep and it chapa down Dimji Kunilambi, and it Lunga Nambu Kandaji Tambana, that D and it deeper Migi Dogoras. You deep, Dogoras, right?
So the things that we confess and restrain from here are faults of body, speech, and mind. And those faults, we can call them negativities, we can call them downfalls. There are negativities, physical, verbal, and mental negativities, physical, verbal, and mental downfalls. So for example, our actions of body, physical actions, it's not that we can just look at the physical expression to determine whether something was positive or negative. It's not that we can resolve in a clear-cut way that if you smile at one person, it's a virtuous action, whereas if you show them a wrathful expression in that kind of, in Tibet, you say that your face becomes dark or black, right? So it's not if you if you show them that dark or fierce expression, that's necessarily a negative action. The way that you will distinguish between virtues and negative physical action would be from the viewpoint of your motivation. So from the viewpoint of your motivation, even if your face becomes dark or strict when you deal with another person, if your motivation was virtuous, a positive motivation, that action can still, the physical action can still constitute a virtuous action. Whereas determining a non-virtuous action or a negativity would be done from the viewpoint, again, of your motivation, whether your motivation is imbued with anger, attachment, or ignorance. So mainly, we look at whether a mind is controlled by anger or attachment. And of course, there are many other misconceptions, discursive conceptions that run through a mind. Not only anger and attachment, but also being superstitious, entertaining certain doubts, being distracted or all over the place, jealousy and so forth. These are also conceptions or misconceptions that we have in our mind. But the main rules that you can use in order to determine whether a certain, let's say, physical activity is a negative action is to look at whether your mind is motivated by anger or attachment. And of course, we have different degrees of anger and attachment, different strengths. So we take a certain physical action to be a negative action if the motivation for performing that action was one of the two, anger or attachment.
If the Dinashita and Nagi Ponino and to touch Givadan, Miguel Tomabudi, so Colombo to Boris. And it touches Sam Giva, how do the temperament touch on Yamichi Kalia and Tabachin Uchin Yamichi Kalia, that big was his and it Shane Yarotot. Rock and it Shenlaya touching any Ninjitoria, Shambatoria, Chanju Sam Toya, Gucci Jogiovan, that delete the what's up Cheji, the Yomaras, rock, but in that Dinji. And the Dutch Manzu Samaya, any Danzin Shurchita, any Ranjin Shurchita, any Chaldan Shurchita on the any Daniel Parmason, God Shurcham Shuleon, any Yangachi, any Shane Yarotori, any Samuel, Nanzolia, Hatch, John Yibu, John Del Habu, any Di John Savagelia, Deepa. John Yoba, the Munzin Chimatu, Kanga, King Munzin Chituba and the Tele and Yamin Chimutu, King Angela Shujoras, things that to the number conduct, that ransom Soya deep and it shut down with that Nanga so the Chagdos, rock.
And we also have a way of determining whether verbal activities are virtues or non-virtues. Again, that is not the determination whether our speech is virtues or non-virtues is not done according to what we say, but according to the motivation that promotes that way of speaking. And similarly, when we look at our mind and determine whether it is virtues or non-virtues, you can do it from the point of view, at least, of what we study here. And non-virtuous state of mind would be a state of mind that disregards others, that ignores others, which means that disregarding compassion, loving kindness, the mind of enlightenment. In that sense, having a sense of disregard to others is here considered to be a grave negativity. So we'll look at a mind and we see the degree to which a mind is affected by ignorance of grasping at the self, by self-cherishing, by anger and attachment and ignorance. And the strength of those states of mind bring about a strong division into friends, enemies, and strangers. So we are strongly affected by those states of mind. And it is so easy to incur, because of them, that sense of disregard to others, ignoring others. So this is the main point that we want to address in our practice. We want to, first of all, recognize how difficult it is to identify, to recognize the degree to which we disregard others. It is difficult to recognize, and even if you can recognize it, giving it up is something that is quite difficult to do in your actual practice. So this is one of the main focus of points that we take on in our practice. So then in relation to the section of confession and purification, those are the things that we confess and restrain here, particularly in this section, right? The sense of disregarding others.
수술령아 있음 돈이 되고 강사샤버디 아니 시우치가 메바이나 아니 대를 땜비기 아니 샤담디야 다 야부 용어 말았어 이 용어 말이 묘 자세 자탄 말아 진짜 먼저 때 수술령아 있음디 아니 야 냠용 체슈디 융아 체슈디 수술 아니래 여반자 디비 아니 융엔지 디피시 캠비톤 아니 텔레빙이 아니 샤담치바나 샤담 내내 키워진 거를 마도 수술령아 있으면 다부지 맞게 아니 지 시야 강가디 아니 카팔론 시도 세대바나 아니 디버샤세 칸 시에 좀 전에 디버 마음으로 뭐 디버샤지 용도도 asro.
Identifying the negativities we have been involved with becomes one of the main points that we need to hit in a practice. It is an essential point in our practice. If we do not become clear in our mind with respect to the negative actions that we confess and the one that we restrain from, the confession and restraining will not work out well. But if we do not become mindful of negative actions that we have done before, if we do not remember them in terms of time and objects and so forth, if we just keep it in that hazy way, our confession and restraint will not carry great power. So our actions of body, speech, and mind are not hidden to us. We are acquainted well with our activities of body, speech, and mind. We know them. We need to remember them. We need to become mindful of them. And if you do that, if you become mindful, if you remember those activities, then your confession and restraint goes well. Whereas if you don't really if you don't take ownership of your actions of body, speech, and mind, and you just turn to those objects in the presence of which you confess and purify, your purification and restraint will not be done well. They will be quite feeble.
And be yon chobach yorwas tagdon ji chamba de zewa ninji chanju sem and ji umu benelu xian dige and jitangi kun namba menya ji lobjo yung ji meji kon be yon choba dinji yorwas da yon choba di ani ye susu yon chob to ji ro mele xian yon chob to yo chu dige and susu yon chob ma tu waina teni 다 동시에 소리지 차기도 왔어. 먼저 저거들이 로직이 있음들 용 다용면 아니지 이 시에들 뭐도 이런 거지네 시에들 뭐도 라는 땅도 처음부터 세딩이 근데 이거도 왔어. 다들 먼저 될 대딩이 소리. 등이 조치 달라고 왔다 자치자다 말에 아니 땅아 계시지 땅이 고쳐서 지금 먼저 디노로 대딩이 소리 라는 땅도 Dipashagumus, Dipashagu the same Riumus, Ra. This would never was lost.
So when we confess and restrain our negativities, we need to do that with a sense of inspiration. So in thinking of the sense of inspirations, the things that really inspire your mind. When we speak of loving kindness and compassion, the mind of enlightenment, developing an insight into reality, those topics can be inspiring to someone that is even not Buddhist, right? If you're Buddhist or if you're non-Buddhist, you can find those things to be inspiring. So when we teach the Dhamma to others, when we speak about Dhamma, we want to also inspire others. But can we inspire others if we ourselves do not become inspired? So we need to, first of all, make sure that we develop inspiration in taking up those practices. Otherwise, if we do not allow them to inspire our mind, the power of those practices, the potential will be quite feeble. How much will we purify without that sense of inspiration? Which is something that Geshe feels that we need to look at, because sometimes, in looking at a center like that, where you have a resident community and also people that come to visit the center and might have been around for a year or two, sometimes they come up with those statements that I've been here for a couple of years and I don't think that those people here are practicing. They're just teaching, they're just speaking of the Dhamma, but in terms of actual practice, I don't find that inspiring at all. And Geshe says that, yeah, you hear those kind of statements. And Geshe said that here is, in the role of the teacher, the resident Geshe, and people come to talk to him, and you hear those statements every once in a while. It says that, yeah, you speak about the Dhamma, but looking at people here, I think that they need to purify more negativities. They need to purify more non-virtues. It's something that's not nice to hear. It is a bit unpleasant to hear, but some people do come up with those statements.
통구여라 다디 제단 카요마 간스나 소수기 아니 소수의 예비 뒤즈디 아니 지 라비잔 딘디지라야 라비야 뒤즈라야 타마투디 인디기 지체도다 디기 기라판 주비 소와디 야 레마투 아니 미비 셰베다 미파쇼미 제단 남규님부디야 아니 고 통원디기 아니 게마도비기 연댕이 참 토마토지 용거로 왔어. 이네 빼나가지고 소소도지면은 소소면제 간사디 라비자 디디지기 야 아니 라비야 뒤즈 단도 수종원디 간지 아니 메시 셴버드 durna 아니 소소면세디 지기여버지 제디에네야 디짱 소소 디워sam지기 먼저 지존드는 대고 잠발라 디간 지금도 지존드 띵고도스라 지존드 맞된 타메도지 간지 지존이야 태버치기 추 칼라킨 지조가 현대 슝이 중에 지조가 띵마토바이나 아니 야지 찬주스미 냠네세디 카고 슝이 사레스 뭐야
Particularly here at this center in Australia, you can say that there are people that look up to us. They're looking for someone to set an example. So we need to be careful in the way that we behave, in the way that we approach a practice. In terms of practice, it might sometimes seem that we're talking a lot, but in terms of personal practice, we're doing too little. Geshe says that this is sometimes the impression that he gets, right? So when you look at it, the way that he handles his own study and practice and teachings, it might appear sometimes that there is more talking and less practicing happening. So this is something that we need also to address personally, because if we do not let what we speak about affect the way that we behave, then those things can be seen by others. Others might look at the way that we behave and think that while we speak of certain topics, certain things quite a lot in terms of our practice, not a lot is going on. So then do not become complacent with what you do in this life. You can say that being in a place like that and being involved with the Dhamma in comparison with the way that others live the life is okay. But we shouldn't be complacent with just thinking that it's quite okay, or it's enough what we're doing here. We depend upon other people in our society, in our community. And since we do depend upon others in our community, we need to offer service to them. And if we do not offer service to those that we depend upon in our community, in our society, we're not actually going to be practicing what Shantideva teaches here in his Guide to Bodhisattva way of life.
당시 다 디바샤에 시든 쪼로데 디직 차르도스라 아니 나는 나로라야지 아니 샤타다르면나 안간주 디니파 아니 칠로라야 라비자 칸드시 자스로 칸드지 람된 치고 디자우니 용에 메디지는 거스 니바들이야 난조라야 레와치치 용딩 사찬 델레야 레딩디 이치 민 토메 타슨 칸드지 용은 델레야 이치 동 아버지마도 때마터네 로 짐지마도 때마도네 디 남주 때 아니 삼남다고는 땡고에 백해치물 했었어 니 토네 도시 저와이나 니 다디바샤야기 랑가 시자 쪼로 된다 나디리로 통이도스라.
So then in terms of what we train it here, in this particular set of teachings, we want our behavior to accord with what we say, right? Our speech and actions should accord with each other. In order to do that, when we look at the way that we interact with each other here in our community, we need to be respectful to one another and also to treat each other with patience. If we do not respect each other and we don't treat each other with a sense of patience, we're inside our community, we're not doing it right. And that would also be reflected in the way that we treat others. So how do we deal with others? Well, when others come to visit us in our community, we want to also have that motivation that is genuine as possible. Even if you cannot really, if you don't go around all day and smile at people and kind of have that inviting and welcoming attitude, at least in your mind, you want to have this positive motivation with respect to them. We need to be genuine with in our interactions with others. So if you do that, if internally in your community, you become respectful and you're patient with others, but also for the people that come in to visit us, you're welcoming them with a genuine approach. Geshe feels that in terms of the confession, and here it's not just confession, the word in Tibetan also implies that you lay aside those negativities, right? So if you do that, then you're laying aside negativities, laying them down, not just confessing them, but ridding yourself of them will be done well.
당원 잡아지 영어 말로 왔어. 미주 가창다 디딜레 때진 딱지 아니 남비기 쳐서 되니 하든지 다 제리지 민징 쳐서 되지 요리 슬라운 다디 쇼지 여사를 상대원 데레디 난 디나노경이 미주 남규 디베티 아니 지 개발매비 소리 때데베나 지단당에 저쪽으로 신말때 간지 디따다지 예상 따다지 되고 사람들이 지르도 쓰려고 말되냐 딜싸인 지지문도 쓰라.
So then if in your facial expression, body language, physical expression, if you welcome others, if you treat others with a welcoming or genuine approach, and you do it once and twice when you come to visit the center, at some point you become like family members. And as it works with family members, sometimes you go through the motions, through the motions of moods. So even if they become your family members, if later on there's a certain situation where you've facial expression, body language is not quite right, still, if they're your family members, you're going to accept it, or they're not going to be too affected by it. Whereas if that's going to be their first interaction with you, where they hear about, for example, this center, and they think that there's something probably quite special about Chenrezig Institute, about this Buddhist center. They come and visit here for the first time, and they see people going around here and being completely unfazed by visitors, completely disregarding or ignoring visitors. Geshe feels that the feeling that people will have, the experience that people will have, will not be that positive. So this is something that we need to think of. Now, Geshe, in bringing up these points, is not saying that we're being totally unwelcoming to people, right? He's not pointing his fingers at us and say that we've been doing it wrong all along. It's not saying that. Sometimes it's good just to think of those points in order to make sure that we work on those aspects continuously.
간지 시작시 뭐 디바들이야 lunga 익스 디바연자 아니 lunga 익스 간지 단다바도 간지 lunga 익스디 차당 모성 샤완 교비 아니 다 lungin남주 나기 집이 아니 마주 아니 삼리야 상주 디지 주부터 조샤바다 디 아니 디바레샤스 디지무두스다 디샤고두스란 띵교탄고 세보라스라 띵교탄이야 카요 라요기 아니 교회지 땅바이나 아니 다 속사 세 디차르다 디바샤 뭔디 디바샤 디차르다 마도 카츠스 시에샤바이나 소수위 lunga 인성이야 교치에 마땅하나 아니 디바샤바마 디바사바로 차르다스로.
So altogether here, when we confess and restrain our body, speech, and mind, the actions of body, speech, and mind, we need to do it genuinely to the point in which it affects our behavior of body, speech, and mind. If we not just say the words, confess them, but we lay them aside, those negative actions of body, speech, and mind, and our behavior changes through that, we accumulate the collections. Other than that, if we just say the words, if we confess them, but our body, speech, and mind does not change, if our behavior does not change, rather than being a process of confession, it should actually be something that helps us to accumulate negativities.
Dadi jawad namaya da ne lemjela moshi mishiba timubis any chebi tenjin yimiki kansa sukang chegya digbi risuneba tatan shude digbi risuneba ranjin kanamando chebi tenjin bigi that domba yomi konala edal neba chebi diba kaimba le chawangba kairo yebana any shaji ngobo teres.
Let's look at a commentary to verse 61. Sorry, 63. I have created each and every negativity due to unknowing and ignorance with regards to karmic cause and effect, regardless of whether it is the action of a person with vows who only creates accepted negativity or prescribed misdeed, or the action of a person without vows who only creates natural non-virtues with regards to self and others. Those are the things that we confess here. Let's look at the way that we confess, it says, before the eyes of the protectors, with hands folded and the mind seeing the fears of suffering, I prostrate again and again and confess all of them.
Terdadi nanju tachi ani kyabdan gan oni ani chigiyobati ani ta kunjo sunros ra inza ta kunjo sungi ani dün ani kunjo sunga ta kunjo sung so tu jo yana menadi ani tachi landor ni shinchi malo tending lamu ki bishin ki chawa ta ti dün ya 무수비래야 태문자친도 아니 단답하도 간 아니 말을 체자와 간 농주 쇼샤와 아니 차단 모습이 상황이 기를 간지 영화 있으면 이거 사샤와 잼부터는 아니 다 단에선 딱 자원 체매 아니 공부 투데스 인이 샤든 수진 책임 소리 체지니까 아니 손데 소딱 투바이나 딱
Looking at the way that we confess here, we think that we are at the presence of the protectors, as it says here in this verse. Let's look again at verse 64. Before the eyes of the protectors, right, in their presence. So we think of not only Buddhas and Bodhisattvas being in the presence in front of us, but also the lamas, the spiritual teachers. In their presence, we put our palms together, and with a mind of anguish, we offer salutation, and we then confess the negative actions that we have done with our body, speech, and mind. We confess negativities and non-virtuous actions done with body, speech, and mind, and we also commit not to do them again.
상기세는 집이 공부장을 무슨 조금 태모자와 삼바 동하는 집이 생기 양담 이한테 창사의 대바 탐지 대다 탐지 시작을 키우고 이제 어떻게
The commentary says one should confess all one's negativities by prostrating repeatedly in front of the Buddhas and their children with folded hands and a mind that sees the dangers of negativities.
다스ум바 캠버솔은 이번에 또 담자와네스 담자와네 잼바남기 달라티 농발라본 젤드소 는 상부 말라비 힌체다니 용미게세 담자체.
And then we make a promise, we make a pledge in the next verse 65. So looking briefly at the outline. We've looked at confessing negativities, performing the past, those 2 points, and now we're going to look at point C, which is requesting the attention of holy beings and pledging to turn away from wrongdoing negativities. So here we make a pledge, a promise not to do that again.
lavjati khona teni ta hingu yanza ani di ani jesu sonya di lamden khan batele ya ani sozu linga yesu liba khan yo bati ani di lavjati ya lavaina ani sanji gi jesu sonya yes mado sozu tsani malana ani sanji gi jesu sonya gi lama gi shini jesu sonya chi ta tavshi kilimindo asra is a deal lapsin. The Tanis only the lapsin, and if Mama Chiki, in Mugiotan, Chediati, Zawin, Chigness, Tamjet, Semia, Tamjet Giovanna, and it Tamjet Sharp and Dima is Samsongi, Kaduin Korea, Topside Judas, and the Samia kind some between men, can't tune a good teaching, Rojaji, Yoros, rock.
And this verse says, I request the guides to accept my negativities as mistakes. Since they are not wholesome, I shall not do them again. So when we request the guides to accept my negativities as mistakes, the guides here are guides like not only the spiritual teachers, but also the guide Buddha Shakyamuni, our guide. So then we're guided by Shakyamuni Buddha solely through being guided by his teachings, by his advice. So if we take up the teachings that Buddha Shakyamuni gave and we train at them, we'll be cared for by the Buddha. And the same thing also applies to being cared for by our virtuous friends, our spiritual teachers. So we do have that wish to be cared for by them. Please take care of me. To be taken care of by those teachers would mean to put into practice the instructions, the teachings that we get from them. Other than that, if we don't train in those teachings and still have hopes to be cared for by them or for them to take care of us, there would be no way for them to take care of us other than when we follow the teachings of those guides. So we make here that promise, the pledge. I will train in your precepts, your teachings. I will abstain from negativities. I should not perform those negativities again. It says, "O guides, for these reasons, please accept my negativities as mistakes. Since these negativities are not wholesome, I promise not to do them again, even in the course of my life." Making the promise in this way, not to do the negativity henceforth, even in the course of one's life.
And the same thing, and about the Suzuki, and they go make a change about it. Zawani yata yabu chondu, and the Pesasha or Samsung gate, and in Gavach came Matu Pardu, and they were Tayagi, Julia Dradi, the Kamupe, the Dray, the Yomastra.
So here we're speaking of confession as part of purification. So for this process to become a purification of negativities we have done before, we need in our mind to recognize that those negative actions that done before are not good at all. Not only that, we need to have that state of mind that thinks, alas, so pitiful, I've performed those negative actions. Unless we develop that state of mind which thinks that, alas, I've done those actions, it's hard to think that this confession will become a cause for purification.
That the and Sambo Malaba, that is non true change in Batoya and Tazak to Maras, things that on Zugi, Sancham then the Lavjalia, Katsu, Slav to Vina. Sancham then the Nazi, Lavjalia, Katsu, Jan to Vina, and Samlia Ratrech. The Diungros, Rock.
Now, it's hard to generate an appreciation of those negative actions that we have done before right from the get-go, right from the beginning. But if we take up the teachings of the Buddha and we put them into practice in the training, the more you're training them, the greater you can appreciate those negative actions that you've done before. It will come through training in teachings of the Buddha.
Lavjadelia, can't lavati, Muyan Katu Kautulea, Chip Matuga in the yam. And they were shabby, Jula drew over the Pesivuris, Tagaran Tonti, Yan, Gaukomech, Luna Yisu, Livakan Yabadi, Chip, and the Lavjat the Dichiglia, Lojong Chia, to Tama, the Diabuchunsa or Samsongi, and the Gaukomech Giovanni. Not the chippy, Covid number, me, Chamanti, but Mamu Shuji, Ini kengi mamshu thot phagwa de ya sem sulaya ani gawa gomchin phapegu chin bello chin dewa nyonya je yongsara sra.
So we do our best in either listening to those teachings or teaching them. But apart from listening and teaching them, we also need to put them into practice as much as we can in our training. And if you not just say the words or listen to the words, if you put it into practice, then that will become an actual purification of negativities. And together with that, it's also good to develop a sense of joy in being able to do that. We spend some time in training our body, speech, and mind. And if you become happy, if you rejoice in being able to do that, that rejoicing will also work as purification of negativities. So we remain in cyclic existence. We stay within cyclic existence. And as such, we experience situations of strife. It's not easy, it's quite difficult, but still when you think of the things that you can do and you develop joy in training your body, speech, and mind, that sense of joy brings about happiness to your mind, but also a sense of peace, a sense of relaxation.
And Sanji Chomden song and the Kangi put together, Kazuya and the Tengu and the Jagar Kibi song. And it that the Maru show us to someone gay. And it should do I know, and it they were joining tap. And it gave a drug tap kitchen or that. In this someone should they were joining tap someone should do I know that to she gone, they were shot to Tinamaya, Manduachi, your Mari Sungota. In last that the Yongi Diva Tava, Togen Bavatan, Gadon Renches of Susu, Ran Chat Lenge Dinami la Minkishi. Jonse Shikan, Tolan Sujan de Michabala, Nima Rishi, Digby Go, Toman Jongi, Gun Toshi Shab, London Tuber Chashin, Chaber to Chanjuki Semki, Cake Jomala, Mini, Bever Chawas, so still. Never chose.
Then it says, although there are many doors to purification explained in the teachings and treatises, there are 84,000 discourses that the Buddha gave. They are collected into a set of teaching that is called in Tibetan the Kangyur, that has more than 100 volumes. Then there's a set of teaching that is called the Tengyur, which consists of commentaries, for example, given by the Indian scholars, the Indian masters. So looking at this vast body of teachings, the teachings of the Buddha and the treatises, they act as methods for confessing, purifying negativities and accomplishing virtue. And as such, there's none of them that is not included within the 4 paths of the antidote. To continue with the reading, it says, let's see, although there are many doors for purification explained in the teachings and treatises, to purify the way of the complete 4 powers in the way to purify, that this purifies also the karma definitely to be experienced is explained in the Togebawa, or the Blazes of Reasoning, the great commentary to the 8,000 verse sutra. We do not know the instances of karmic cause and effect well, and who, although knowing a little, do not practice what has to be abandoned, what has to be practiced accordingly, should confess on a daily basis uninterruptedly by way of the 4 powers. Especially one should practice by focusing on purifying the obstacles to the generation of bodhicitta.
뒤비스 제보 이번에 선생님 전주스미 제보를 주고래 디버셔를 이보고 전주스미 제보를 주고 너무 시켜진 중 시셔 디버셔를 내위니 비제와
Let's look at the remaining words in the commentary to chapter number 2. So, Geshe Rinchen composed a summarizing verse. It says, those tormented by the faults of attachment, jealousy, and conceit due to aggregation will not generate the supreme mind. Hence, whatever mistakes one made with body, speech, and mind, confess them from the depths of one's heart to the protectors. The name of this chapter, this is the chapter on the confession of negativities, the second from the introduction to the action of bodhisattvas, or to the deeds of bodhisattvas. This is the commentary on the second chapter called Purifying Negativities, from the commentary on the introduction to the actions of bodhisattvas called The Entrance for the Children of the Conquerors.
So much.
Thank you. I'll put the prayers on the screen. Dedication prayers.
Sanjo Rinpoche, Make Pana Kegyochi, Kehanya Pame Pai, One Gondo Perwashu, Kowe Shinkansu, Pendante Wamadu Sowe, Chenre Sipa, Tenzin Yatsoi, Shape Sinte Vardu Tenpiruchi, Chanchin Jangun Yawe, Tenzi Yawe, Choson Kowe Me Motu, Ada Sotu Shikondu, Shabden Sho.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Geshe.
Thank you, Geshe-la. See you on Sunday.
Yes,
And everyone else.
Thank you.
Thank you, Geshe. Thank you.
Bye. Bye all.
Bye.
Bye, Terry.
Bye. Shay, Graham.
So you are using your own way, that's not really
Yeah, that's
Yes.